Well, hello, everybody. You've reached the Spiritual Care Network monthly webinar series. And today we have a great one planned by Chad Hampton in the Mid-South area. And we do this. This is part of our outreach. We offer these free CEU webinars every month. We also do conferences, community-based conferences every month. And next week, we're going to have one in Fort Worth, Texas. And then we have a lot more planned throughout the year. We also do monthly networking meetings. So if you have a meeting near you, you could find out more information on our website at spiritualcarenet.org. And there's a web page on there with a calendar showing where all the different events are. Sorry, got choked up there. All the different events are across the U.S. You could also find out more information on our Facebook pages and Facebook groups, and uh, and also we'll be sending out the monthly newsletter, and all that information is going to be on the newsletter. But we are thrilled to host this with Freed Hardeman University. Parker, tell us what's going on at Freed Hardeman.
Sure. Well, right now we're just gearing up for finals. All the undergrads are stressed because that's, coming up in May, and then the seniors are going to be walking, and then it'll be a ghost town around here for a little bit before things get active again in August. But that's just the way that it works. As far as what we've got going on at the graduate level, we're getting ready to start our summer semesters. Of course, I work with all of our theology programs. I work with our Masters of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, our Doctorate of Behavioral Health. And then we actually have a new master's program, which is a Master's of Science in Applied Sports Psychology, which is kind of a growing field. And we were able to take some pre existing classes from our exercise science degree and some of our clinical stuff and put them together to offer this. So we're excited to see where that goes. Um, if you know anybody that is looking to get back into the world of grad studies, they want to pursue a doctorate, they wanted to pursue a master's degree, or maybe get their counseling license, more than happy to help with any of that. And we also partner with institutions to sort of mitigate the cost a little bit because that can get expensive. We want to be cognizant of that, but I'll make sure to include my contact information in the chat box after I get finished here. But we're happy to be partnered with Spiritual Care Network. I love the work that gets done here. The idea of building a bridge, it's a needed work, and we're excited to be part of it.
Awesome. We appreciate the support from Freed Hardeman University, not only on our monthly webinars, but at their conferences and just ongoing support. So thank you so much, Parker. So let's get started. I would like to introduce a good friend of mine and board member and group leader, Chad Hampton. He's from the Memphis area and runs that group, and that has really grown. The Mid-South area is just on fire with the Spiritual Care Network, with some really large meetings all across Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and more. I think we just started one in Florida. So it's going well. People do see the need to bridge the gap between mental health and faith. And this is one way we're going to do it. So let me turn it over to you, Chad. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, it's so great to be on here. I am really honored. It's an awesome opportunity, for us to connect. I know we have a smaller group here, so this is going to be more like a conversation. I definitely love interaction. I'll definitely share this presentation. But we always want to start a little bit about myself. I know some of you probably read the bio, some of maybe not, but I remember when 5 years ago, almost 5 years ago, when I met Eric. It was in March that I met Eric of 2021. It was 5 years ago. And he asked me to join it. I got the privilege of working under him as a rep for Starlight Recovery when he was a director of Starlight. And, you know, I will never forget, we were working there, and he was always talking about the Spiritual Care Network. And he said, Chad, I want you to start one in Memphis. And I was not really happy about that, because I was like, I have too many things going on. My life is too full of, I got too many things. I'm trying to figure out this new role as a rep for Starlight. I work 7 days a week. I work in interior design. I do all this stuff. And I remember, but I'm like, I got to please my director. I got to please my boss. And of course, I'll give you a little dovetail in a second, but I'll never forget, I was in a bathroom at 4 o'clock in the morning in my guest bathroom in my apartment. It was all dark, and I had my iPhone. I was doing this, and I'm creating this Facebook page, and I remember how resentful I was. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I just can't ticked off at my boss. Gosh, I'm just following his leadership. And then lo and behold, 5 years later, I have helped start probably 6 or 7 spiritual care networks. It's a passion of mine. I love it. And my background, part of why I love it is because of my lived experience. I was a pastor for 15 years full time, went to school for ministry. I had a degree in church music and Bible and a minor in history. And through my own journey of just spiritual trauma, through the journey of dealing with an eating disorder, uh, probably some over scrupulosity with OCD and other uh, fish tentacles of mental health, and having to get help, all while in a church setting, in a leadership role, in a place where faith, you couldn't be struggling with mental health. You couldn't be struggling with issues. You could not. I had to keep everything a secret, and I suffered alone in silence. And my family walked alongside that, but even that was different because of with your own mental health and trauma. So, bridging the gap between mental health, faith, the addiction community, and addiction recovery services, community services is near and dear to my heart, because I'm a firm believer that the coming together has to be a place, and the spiritual care network being a bridge and a space that creates dialogue. Because I have found a lot of times ministers are afraid to connect with people that are in the mental health field.
Mhm.
They're afraid, or they feel awkward, or some ministers, I think, deep down in the heart, they mentally assess that yes, mental health and faith can coexist. I believe it, but in their practical living and theology, they struggle with that. So that's been a passion of mine, to help try to not enforce that, but teach and explain that yes, you're getting help from a therapist does not diminish your faith in Christ. I'm a Christian, for a Christ follower. Your struggle with addiction, or your struggle with a sin, or your lifelong illness, whether it's a disease, whatever, it doesn't limit you, and it doesn't decrease your faith in your God, your higher power. It just owns the reality of the work that you're living in and the world that you're living in. So, really passionate about that. And so, but enough about the spiritual care network, and a little bit about myself. Like I said, I live in Memphis. I currently work for Acadia Healthcare as a treatment placement specialist. I've been in the mental health field for 10 years. In 2013, I stepped out of ministry. I was at 2 churches for 10 years and did some inner city work in inner city LA at the Dream Center for 6 months. And then probably worked in my pastoral career working with the underserved in the community. And 2013, stepped out of ministry, not because, well, I mean, in all honesty, I slept with my secretary. I sold $500,000 from the church, and so you got to leave when that happens. Just kidding.
Oh, thank you. Okay, good.
Didn't do any of that. Usually when someone leaves the ministry, deep down, when I talk about it, I talk about my journey. Everybody wants to know, really, who did he sleep with? Who did he steal money from? I'm like, no, it wasn't Greenleaf. It wasn't TBN. It wasn't Jimmy Swagger. It wasn't PTL. I just was leadership. Things were changing, and I really felt God telling me to leave. But and I'm tracking with me. I love dialogue and story, because I think our story, our narrative, sets up for our talks. And so when I left the ministry and started life all over again, I got in the mental health field in 2018, and worked for a crisis hospital. Then I worked for another crisis hospital. Then I worked for a PHP IOP with supportive housing. Then I worked for Starlight. And then, of course, had my own lived experience with going away to treatment, going to therapy myself, working through my stuff, sponsors, recovery groups, meetings. And so then in this role as a treatment placement specialist, which I've been for 5 years for Acadia, which I love doing, I cover Arkansas, West Tennessee, and Mississippi. But the biggest thing I learned is that people don't understand that mental health is an addiction, thought disorder, mood disorders, life controlling issues. They are, it's not a one off. It just didn't happen. Mental health just didn't happen. It takes time. And then when it takes time, it's both lived experience, it's genetics, it's family of origin, it's choices, it's all the things that encompass your life. It just didn't happen. And so, that being said, I really have developed a passion for what we're about to talk about today. So, I'm going to share my screen and then we'll start talking about the blueprint. So, 1 second. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Not yet. Try again.
Still not there? Let's try this again. Allow. Share this window, or there you go.
Awesome. There we go.
Okay, can y'all see it?
I see myself actually. So put on your PowerPoint.
It's on.
We're looking at the Zoom screen.
Guys, I'm sorry. We tried this earlier just a second ago. We had it right.
We had it. While he's doing that, just to let you know, Jacqueline, our executive director, is at a church retreat this week, so that's good for her. But she coordinates all the CEUs, and she will, yeah, that's the one. Perfect. She will send out an email, a follow-up email, with the link to do your evaluation and easily print off your certificate. But if you have any technical issues, let us know. Back to Chad.
Here we go. All right.
We're good now.
All right. So this is like I would like to start, and I do want some feedback. We have enough people on this presentation. We can actually have feedback. So I will set this picture up. So about 15 years, about probably almost 20 years ago, I was I was as a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor for some 300 students in Memphis at our church, and then I was at a part of a cohort of youth pastors across the nation. And I saw at this cohort immersion, I saw this picture, and it still to this day it moved me. You know, it grabbed me not just because of, yes, it's black and white, it shows soldiers, but it grabbed me for many reasons and it touched me. And so I want to start this presentation off for all of us at this picture. And so if you can, and we can, please turn, everyone get ready to turn your mics off mute. I want us to take a look at this picture deeply. And I want you to give me some words that come to your mind as you see this picture. And you can do that now.
Comfort.
Interestingly, first off, being 30 years retired from the military, and I believe this picture came from Okinawa, if I'm not mistaken, during World War II. But anyway, just kind of anecdotally there, but in one word,
Thank you.
One word, yeah. I like comfort. I'm going to go with that.
Would also say grief.
Mm-hmm.
But then I see the other guy, and he's just like into his book or whatever, like he's not even acknowledging the other two. So that's interesting.
Maybe
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think compassion is the word that comes to mind.
Other emotions, feelings. Give me more than one word.
To use our current common terminology, holding space, being there, with the guy. Obviously, he's suffering. And again, just somebody who's just there, to comfort him.
Yeah.
And to, interestingly, to make a comment on the fellow on the side, it is interesting how that we cope. That you know, there's no telling what actually was happening over here. We don't know if he was another medic, maybe making notes. We don't know exactly, but it is interesting. You're right. Whoever made the comment, that it's interesting that on one hand you have this one soldier that's in, you know, just cracking up, for lack of better terms, on my part, and you have another one that seems to be just going through his daily activities. But quite frankly, that's warfare.
That's good. Anybody else? What came to mind, for me, who I identified with, and I would even probably say at the moment of my journey, I identified with the guy buried in the chest of the other soldier. And so in that personal space of my life and time in my life, I'm a visual person, and I picked myself and I looked at him and I felt the guy buried in the chest of the soldier. And yes, you are right. I think Pete, I think you're the one that said it. I think it was that it is from uh, 1940s, early 50s. I think it is Okinawa, of two soldiers. And I do see all those words. I see comfort. I see grief. I see two men. And we know as men, for the men who are on here, we do not. This is not a common pose for two men together. It is not a common pose, and especially in the worlds of day in which we live, where you see two men who men were known for strength and power, and we are going to be strong and independent. And soldiers, especially soldiers, are the most well trained. They are the most disciplined of really all typically, I believe, all of those in human life and work. Soldiers are typically the most disciplined, and yet in this moment, the total contrast and irony, you see two men embracing one another, and the one is embracing him in his absolute, you can't even imagine what the boldness and the braveness that led him to just fall in the arms of the other, and the other man embracing him and putting his hand on the back of his head in a nurturing state, and the other arm is on his back. That is moving. And what I start this talk as, when I do it, I like to start it off and say, this is what we can't ever lose as those who are in the treatment field. We can never lose it, whether you are a clinician, whether you're a working placing specialist, or if you're working in nonprofits, if you're in the faith community, whatever we are, when someone is in their dire space of hurting and pain, sometimes we get to see the man in this present state grieving, and we can emotionally see him. Sometimes he is like that other soldier, just doing his thing. Sometimes we just see people that are doing what they're doing. But the bottom line is, we have to be that person, like who is holding the guy with his head in his chest. We have to hold space. And I always tell people, don't ever lose sight of the place that you are in and who you are and the field that we're called in. Because if you're called and you're on this call, you are not here for the money. Money is not your motivator in this field. You're in here for people. I'm in here for people. Do we want money? Yes, but money is a tool for us. It is not our goal. Because again, if you wanted to be in another field, you could have, most likely. You could have been working at a bank. You could be teaching. You could be doing something else. But if you're on this call, if you're a part of this network and we're doing what we're doing, you're in the field of helping and changing lives, and people are our motivation. And so don't ever discount and ever dismiss the emotion and the feelings that we need to have when we are holding space, caring, loving, showing compassion through grief, loss, whatever, holding space. So I always like to start here before I go into any kind of continuing care placement, because if we don't have the right emotion and we forget our heart, the rest of what I'm about to say won't even matter. So I used to be a preacher, so if I get passionate, forgive me. Okay, so this is where we'll start. I always kind of, there's a blueprint of mental health treatment and guiding clients to their best outcomes. And so my passion, won't go into all that, but I gave you 4 learning objectives that came on, which you can look at. But bottom line is, I really just want us to take a fresh look at our knowledge of the mental health journey, because I have found more than ever that most people, I have found, definitely lay people, which are the people that we serve, they do not understand the journey of mental health in modern, and certainly in America. They don't understand clinical levels. They don't understand the level of care, the types of care you get. They don't understand what happens and again, in a recovery sense, we can use the old recovery language. If you have unmet expectations, you're going to have what? You're giving yourself planned resentments. So helping people understand the journey, set expectations, and so forth, and explaining my services and link, which it could be explaining all of our services. So, all right, let's move on. So I always like to start about resourcing and the process of, and helping people find resourcing. Um, so number one, I always say looking at resourcing. So if you picture everything like in 2013, I during my time of leaving the ministry, I trying to find myself, try to find what I was doing. I decided to go. I was like, God, my life is not working right. I'm like, you told me to leave the ministry, and my life is just not working the way it is. And so I was just in a bad place. And so I was like, you know what? I need to get away. And some people call it a walkabout. Some people talk about a pilgrimage. I did something of sort of like both. So in 2013, I walked 500 miles across Spain and did the Camino de Santiago. So I went on a journey. And so when I think about when I went on the journey, I had to plan, I had to prepare, I had to know what I had available. I had to know how much it was going to cost. I got a backpack. I at one point thought I was going to be living in a tent for a couple of days. I got a tent. I got foodstuffs. I got a little pocket rocket to help to cook food. I had my credit cards. I had my iPhone. I had a solar battery. I had all these things. Just prepare for this 40-day. I was going to do 40 days, just like Jesus. 40 days, 40-day trip. And so I was doing all that in preparation for this big experience. And so I would say the same thing is, and as much preparation as I did, for 40 days, I think about people who are dealing with their mental health crisis or their mental health journey. And really, when we're dealing with clients, whether you start at whatever level of care you start, they're still on a journey. So I always like to talk about resourcing. And so definition of resourcing is the process of identifying and developing coping mechanisms for a positive experience that a client, this is on the mental health side, can access to manage difficult emotions, stress, triggers during therapy, and help them discover. That is a subject of resourcing in the quote mental health and addiction terms. And so my tagline I always say, look, anything is regarding this whole process, it's all about the journey and teaching people what the journey is. So point one is if you're talking to a client and you're talking to a family member, I think you always got to ask, what's their GPS? What does GPS stand for, guys? We just talk about GPS. Who can remember what GPS stands for? It stands for Global Position Satellite. So, but it's basically the dot. Like if you can see who have, those who have Life 360 on your phone, or if you're on Apple Maps, what is your GPS? Where are you at right now globally? And so I think with all of your clients, before we go into any kind of placement, whatever that is, we have to know, and they have to know, where are they at? The first question that God asked Adam and Eve after they sinned, he said, he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and he was walking in the garden. He said, where are you? I was growing up, again, I'm so literal. I'm a literal person. He said, where are you? I'm like, well, I mean, God really knows where you're at. But God wasn't asking that for him. He was asking Adam, where are you? Do you know where you are, Adam and Eve? Do you know what's going on in your life? Do you know what's happening? Do you have an idea of what the heck is going on? You feel shame. You're naked, and like the show, you're naked and afraid. I live naked and afraid in Memphis. So FYI. So anyway, naked and afraid. But I think we always have to ask the clients. So we're talking about they need to know what their GPS is, where are they at. And so when you're talking about resourcing before, first thing you always ask is where they're at. So if someone's seeking treatment, then I always ask what provisions do they have and what they will need. You know, when your people are looking and they're needing go, they need to know what they have to deal with. So in American medicine, if we're talking about in therapy and in treatment of any kind, the first thing we ask is what? It's not what is your diagnosis. That is there. You have to answer where you're at, but we got to ask because if we don't know what they have, we can't tell them where they can go. Because even today, medicine, mental health, treatment, of course, in America Ball is all about, you always have to start with what American medicine has, and that is what is your coverage? Your coverage determines your options. What do you have? Do you have commercial? Do you have Medicare? Do you have Medicaid? Are you self-pay? Are you indigent? Asking those questions. And sometimes we are afraid. Sometimes we are afraid to start that conversation. I've talked with clients, and I used to be afraid because it feels like I'm salesy. I'm sorry. Did someone ask a question? If you did, it's crying. If you have a question, please ask, or Eric, please get the prompt. But I used to feel like felt like I was salesy, and I'm like, I realized that, you know what, I have to talk about the elephant in the room because we got to be honest with what we have. What we have, because if we don't know what we have, we don't know what we can do, where we can go. So knowing about your provisions on their journey, then asking the person before they go on the journey is, I always say everyone is unique on their journey, but the goal is basically the same. So when I went on the Camino de Santiago, I basically had it was 500 miles across Spain. I met everybody that you can imagine from 36 countries. I even met someone from Liechtenstein. And we're on this journey. We were all the same. We're on this journey. And the goal was basically the same. We were heading toward the opposite side of Spain to the cathedral at Santiago de Compostela or to Fistera Point, which is on the Atlantic. That was our goal. However, everybody was unique. I saw an 80-year-old woman from South Africa who had bad knees and had two poles, and she had to have those poles to walk every step. I saw someone with a dog that he carried and a little wagon, and he carried his dog with him all the way across. I saw bikers. Some people biked across it. We're all going the same direction, but everybody was unique. I had at times people have their own stories. Some people can walk faster. Some people have health concerns. Somebody, whoever they are, they have limited time, whatever. Bottom line is everybody's unique. I think the part that sometimes when we're talking about treatment, we forget we cannot just cookie cut somebody into this is what your treatment should look like. If you are this, if you're that, if you're a Christian, you have treatment might want to look like this. If you are a agnostic, or if you are a Buddhist, if you are atheist, your treatment's might look different. If you are a business pan, if you're a white collar employee, your level of treatment and place of treatment based on your provisions, who you are, what you got, might look different. We want to treat you different. So, and then, so that's across the board. Valuing everybody's uniqueness. Because your clients, the guy that's buried in your shoulder, wants to feel unique. No one wants to feel like they're just like everybody else. So validating, if you're talking to someone about the journey and goal, that's great, but always validate the uniqueness of somebody. And then I've got to move willingness to take the journey. Everybody, I always want to ask, what's your willingness? I take that with mental health. I do it very much like a real estate agent. Are you willing, ready, and able? Some people are willing, but are you able? And then are you ready? It needs to be the same with treatment, whatever that is, higher levels, lower levels of treatment, all that, they got to be ready. So I try to use this as my journey resourcing. So this is the big thing. This is my passion. This is uniquely mine, though it has Acadia Healthcare in the corner. 5 years ago, I created this diagram on some level. Started with a poster board and and then I started it on a poster board. Then I made it a PowerPoint, and then I've created this. Katie has adopted some level of this, but this is my passion. I talk about this every day. I print this out to everybody. I've shown this to more and more people every day because this is what we have to explain to people. If we want to have good outcomes of success, people need a map. They need it spelled out. And I'm a visual person. So this is a map. I call it the addiction and mental health journey and guide. Journey, number one, I just talked about the journey, but it's also a guide. So let me walk you through this. You might know this intellectually, but I'm going to give you a presentation as I would present it to a clinician, family, whatever. So basically, if you look at this, if you're taking mental health as a journey, if we look at on the far left, you see outpatient, med and therapy, and then on the opposite side, you see outpatient, med and therapy. That's basically seeing a counselor, seeing a therapist, social worker, starting the process, asking questions, could be even seeing a pastor or a faith leader, and then you start to feel. So on the left, outpatient, seeing a counselor on the left is number one, is for primary discovery. When someone comes across your path, they're starting to feel funny, or they're saying, I think I need a therapist, or I'm having these issues. I might need to go talk to somebody. They're in the process of discovering themselves and discovering who they are. Soren Kierkegaard, the great Danish philosopher, said, to know thyself is to know God. And you can't know one without the other. And there's some people who really don't know themselves. And so it's important for them to start knowing and trying to figure out. I'm a firm believer God allows problems in people's lives because he's always trying to get an entrance in their lives. And he's always desiring people to not just be, I'm a firm believer God wants you to be holy, but he wants you to be holy, WHOLLY, holy, whole. So outpatients for discovery. Then, so they go through that. But say some point your clients hit the crisis point, which whatever that crisis point is, it's the lowest point on this board. Then this is where the journey begins. And then we'll talk about this. So number one, they'll hit in that place, you'll have the option of going up to all different levels of care. Inpatient level of care, which is basically a hospital and a psych hospital. So if what a psych hospital is, guys, because I've been worked for it, psych hospitals are nothing but a psych ER. They are nothing but a crisis stabilization unit. When you go to an ER, all they're doing is getting you stabilized. They're just getting you to where you can go to the next level of care. And so back in the day, prior to managed healthcare, prior to insurance becoming more available across the board, hospitals were the primary modality of treatment for mental illness, substance abuse, eating disorder. And then the very elite would go places like Hazleton, Betty Ford. But then nowadays, with the advantageous actions of getting more accessible to insurance and programs being available, hospitals have become nothing but a psych ER. Lengths of stay are now short. 3 to 14 days. Usually your 14 days is going to be for geriatric, but they're only for psychotic, suicidal, or homicidal. Total crisis. Very tough time. Next level of care, PHP, which is usually always going to be 6 hours a day. And then, of course, there's IOP, which is going to be 3 hours a day. At partial level, you'll basically see a psych provider and one therapy session. And, of course, it's needed. But the way I view this is I always talk about residential care is this, and this is what most clients don't realize. Residential level of care is the highest level of care. Some people say, no, hospital stay is. No, it's not. It's because it's not specialized. It's stabilization. And on top of that, in mental health and people changing lives, it's about the journey. It's the longer we know someone stays in treatment, the more likely their health and their life will start to change. So that's why residential is the highest level of care. So they're basically at the residential level of care, which is 30 to 45 days. If it's 30 days, you're basically getting 6 years of outpatient clinical at the residential level. 6 years combined clinical, roughly on some level at the residential level. Then, of course, if you go 45, you're almost going to almost 8 years of clinical in outpatient clinical at the residential level. The advantageous aspects of residential are insane, because in residential, you're getting all the levels of care and the levels of success, which I'll explain the mental health stool of success in a little bit. Then, of course, partial hospitalization. And then, of course, you see, and I give you the list of days, and then, of course, groups. And then again, nuance, then outpatient services, 6 months to a year. And then if they continue for 6 months to a year, your clients, which this is the journey. And by the way, this is the clinical standard. This isn't Chad Label Hamptons, Pastor Chad's, Spiritual Care Network Chad, TPS Chad. This is a clinical standard of care. I've just diagrammed it and mapped it out. And so, but I will say this on this journey. Number one, I do want some response. So I want everybody's mic, those who can, a couple of mics off. I want you to ask this question. Between outpatient and outpatient, what is the primary mode of treatment that a client will experience from outpatient to outpatient? Which is outpatient individual once a week, maybe twice, but mostly once a week. Between outpatient, and all those mountains, that journey, when they hit that crisis point, what is the primary mode of treatment does a client receive? Yeah, I do want this is some feedback. Someone say something. I don't know, or.
Yeah, you got me stumped on that one. My inclination, frankly, wants to say groups. I think just
That's it. I'm going to give your inclination. Boy, is that Pete?
Yes, sir.
Pete, well, you're rocking and rolling, bro. You're hitting all the answers today. That is correct.
Uh-oh.
But can I tell you that most clients, I was doing an interview with our news station, most clients don't, and the patients and families don't get that. They think that when you go to higher levels of care, you're going to get more individual, and it's not. And so what happens is with group, you got to have, when you understand groups, you have to know that group care has to be different, and people don't understand that. So what that means is, you tell me, so if someone goes to care, understanding who they are, their coverage, with everything, your group matters. Does that make sense, everybody? Your group matters. Because some people, if you're a white collar person, you don't want to be next to crackhead Fred and Marijuana Mary when you're bougie Beverly. When you are a blue collar, honestly, I'm just an average person. I don't want to be in a group with Jeff Bezos. I know Eric Ailes looks like Jeff Bezos, but I don't want to be in a group with Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg, because your group matters. And so it's amazing to me that clients, I had nurse practitioners that didn't even have that answer, brother. I had people who went to school for 10 years and they couldn't even give me that answer. They said med management. I'm like, no. And so it's important for us to educate families, providers, everybody on this journey. So I'm going to move on quickly because I want to be very respectful of time. But number one, this is what I talk about all the time. I show this everywhere I go. I send this to every client I talk to. I put hundreds of people in treatment. I do presentations. I talk about this all the time. Bottom line, I tell people, this is your natural journey. But if you hit that crisis point, you'll need to do this journey in some nuance, because not everybody's exact. Not everybody needs to go to sober living. Not everybody needs to do transitional, whatever. Not everybody needs to do all the groups, but in some nuance. So there you go. Sort of how I do it. And this is an older slide. I have a little Getty image, but this is how we need to, if you're helping people find treatment, this is how I do it. I call it the mental health treatment guidance pyramid. And I won't go into great deal, but this is how I do it with every patient, every family. Everybody deserves this, really. You always start the base. American medicine, your coverage determines your options. Always start there. Tell them about that. Tell them what they got, and understand what that means to them. Then we talk about their diagnosis and what they're presenting with. Is it a mood disorder? Is it an eating disorder? Is it a secondary eating disorder to a OCD diagnosis? Is it a trauma? Is it PTSD? Is it anxiety? Is it a true DID diagnosis? Whatever. Just straight suicide ideation. What's their presentation? Then I always try to do this. Guys, Evan, let me tell you, I don't care what it is. I'm going to say this. You've heard this. I'm 50 years old, and it took me till I'm 50. Honestly, it took me probably the past 5 years to learn this because I just was in the ministry and I just never knew it. Everything's about money. Did y'all know that? Everything is about money. Jesus talked about money more than everything, and he really did. He used money as the biggest illustration, the biggest parable. Money is about everything. But everything about money, and even in mental health, healthcare, whatever, money, 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 church, money, 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 everything, nonprofit, money, 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 money. I mean, all about money. So it's important with that capitalism and Google and truth helping navigate that. Because let me tell you, just because Google says it doesn't mean it's true. Just because I had a patient I was working with a family, he said, "Well, I checked on AI and it said this, this, this." I was like, "Well, let me tell you the truth. AI ain't right. That's not the case about this place." So always be the person that wanted to advocate truth and over marketing and capitalism. Then always look at the person, who they are as a person, value them, value their uniqueness. And then, of course, how I do it is always help the patient make the best choice, which, of course, a lot of times with residential treatment or higher levels of care, whatever, it doesn't mean send them to where it's best for them. Your motto always needs to be do what's best for the patient. Don't do what's best for your pocketbook. Don't do what's best for your bonus numbers or whatever. Do what's best for the patient. I mean, trust me, when you're, even if your bosses are putting pressure on you, honor your organization, but ultimately that honor your patient first. And again, if you can't do that ethically, then get out of your organization and trust God with something else. God has something bigger for you. All right, mental health. I always call this the mental health stool of success. So again, I believe these are the 4 principles that we have to do when you're treating, giving clients and families a blueprint. This is essential. So number 1, good. If again, same with the rules of the journey. If they stick with that journey, stay the course of this, and then apply these principles and these 4 legs, they'll have a stool. They'll have success. So number 1, good clinical therapy, counseling, mind, soul, emotional work. I think it's important. We really pride ourselves on that in America, is good clinical. For the faith community, they struggle with this a little bit. They actually struggle with all the faith. All America struggles with all of this. Faith community struggles a lot of times with clinical, and it gets confusing, the clinical and the spiritual. When I'm talking to people of faith, I always tell them this: we are 3-part beings. We're spirit, soul, and body. Even I think most of the Abrahamic religions believe that. Even some of the Eastern religions believe in some of those same principles as far as 3 parts. But good clinical, I tell people we're doing soul work, soul, mind, emotional work. If you're a Christian, you are not, you are a spirit. We're not dealing with your spirit and your faith. Because somebody say, "I want to do a faith program." I'm like, well, let me tell you why I don't want to do that. Because a lot of times what happens when you attend someone from an addiction program, we got to do what you got to do. But sometimes people get their faith tied to their performance. And that's when you have relapses. That's when you have failures, and people don't last because they struggle, because they get their faith tied to their performance, not to their position. So I always talk about good clinical, and then always talk about the need for that. Good medical. And with your, medical, good, you can have Jesus and a psychiatrist. You can have Muhammad and a psychiatrist. You can have Allah. You can have, Yahweh, whatever. But you can have good medical. Medical is essential. All truth is God's truth. And I don't think anything should countermand that. I always respect people's belief, but I always think good clinical involves both nutrition and exercise as well. So in the natural and most of American medicine, I have found that we really can individuals accept the clinical and the medical. They don't accept the right side, the community and the mentor and the sponsor. They think that they don't understand that the necessity of those 2. In our culture today, I have found that our Western civilization is crumbling, especially in America. The fabric of community is dying. People are attached to their digital phones. I mean, AI is there. I don't know how many use Chat GPT, but
I beg your pardon. Pete Wells here again.
Yes.
What was that you said about being careful? Was it faith equals success, or because I'm with you? What was that again about?
Your faith. When people struggle with faith programs, I'm hesitant to sometimes send there because they equate their success
Mm-hmm.
in direct proportion to their relationship with God. So their performance is tied to their faith rather
Yes.
than their position, which should be tied to their faith.
Thank you.
Of course. And so Western civilization is crumbling because of community is is a thing that we are one of the greatest things that we're missing the most. We are missing community. I'm putting more and more emerging adults in treatment who live isolative lives. They have their relationships are with their phone. Previous generations, I'm Generation X. Some of us had relationships with our televisions. Video games were there in the Generation Y, Generation Z, and now, of course, in the Generation Alpha, we are seeing that there is no community is what we are all dying to want. We're dying to have it, but we're dying because we don't want to try it. Because community requires vulnerability. And of course, the great Brene Brown says vulnerability is actually, that's the courageous lifestyle. So community is essential. And that's what group therapy is. When someone says group therapy, they're like, I don't need group. Let me tell you, everybody needs a group. Everybody needs a community to belong to. Everybody has to have a family outside of their family that chooses to love them. They expect their family to love them, some, but people always want to find someone that loves them outside of their community, outside their basic family unit, because that family unit chooses to love them, flaws and all. So community is essential. Support groups, ACA, NA groups, Share Cancer Survivor Group, Celebrate Recovery, bending groups, whatever. And then, of course, I'm a firm believer in the mentor and sponsor role. Everybody needs someone in their life. Everybody wants someone in their life to be a big brother, big sister, a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, someone that walks alongside them that they can be clear through honest with, that they don't have to pay for. I'm sorry, a therapist cannot just do it all. They can't. It's not enough. That therapist is there to help them clean the refrigerator of their souls once or twice a week, but they got to have someone that walks alongside them, that loves them, they can be safe with. And that mentor, coach, or sponsor has to be safe. I used to be afraid of the word accountability. Accountability scared the living, scared the hell out of me. But it should have scared heaven into me. But I was afraid of it because it scared me because someone's going to see me. But accountability is the most safest thing to be. And people need to feel safe. And a mentor, coach, or sponsor is someone that is safe. If your clients don't have someone like that in their life, the chances of success are limited. So I use this to my clients, say if they can do all four of these, the chances of their success in their mental health journey from the previous slide will exponentially grow. But it drops 25% if one of these aspects are missing. So we need to encourage that. That's who I am. I won't go into that. I won't go to TPS or 60 Me Across the Nation. That's who I am as an older picture. Don't you love my blush airbrush picture? My skin really does look like that. But here to help you, I do presentations, interviews. I talk to families. I do presentations. I do coaching, intervention, help people place people for treatment all over the nation for anything. Here to serve, here to help. I value what you bring to the table. Thank you for all you do. Friend me on Facebook or LinkedIn. Those are typically my main modes of treatment. I'm going to be hopefully doing podcasts and more social medium presentation on other platforms, but that's coming later this year. But I appreciate what you do. Thank you for being on the call on this webinar. It's a privilege to speak. Eric, thank you for your leadership, and thank you again for your attention.
Great job, Chad. Thank you so much. And I really love the diagram of the journey. That was well done. I like how the peaks and the mountains and all that kind of stuff. That was good. And you'll be glad to share that with the audience.
I'll share it with you, and then I guess you can share that with Jacqueline.
Okay, we can do that.
I don't know how. Eric's taught me many things. I don't know, but y'all can have whatever I have, and if you want to take my name out of it, put your name in it. I believe in that journey. Use it. Get people in treatment. Get them to stay in treatment.
That's
Eric,
great.
I do have one final comment, if I might, before we leave. Pete Wells here. I just wish we could have had a much better speaker. Oh, hi, Chad. How you doing?
That's great.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Very well done. And so more information coming about your podcast that you're planning on doing?
Yeah, I'm looking to do that. I'm really believing for that. I really think I have a passion for that. I want to help people. Help people. I train marketers. I want to talk about just simple life hacks and life axioms and having conversations and really want to change the landscape. I want to make things better, guys. I mean, I believe in what we do.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
coming.
and just to kind of go over the topic of financial concerns. I mean, I hear that all the time, especially those that are indigent. Uh, what do you run across? How do you overcome that? What are your suggestions? We
Sure.
can't
So when I
call it Cinecore, right, Pete?
Well, and I tell people, listen, I've had to talk to clients and say, listen, when I ask about your financials, I'm good. It's okay. You're safe. But I always say, listen, number one, this is going to be your best option. This is going to find the best option for every level of care. And then again, depending on who they are and where they're at, you're honestly educating them. I'm like, well, then you're really not ready and you might not like where you're at, but here's a path. If you want to get on certain insurances, get this in. I'll get you an insurance broker. If you want this and you want to change this, here's this resource. Just guiding them. If you can get people somewhere to go and direct them to some path and some place, that's more palatable people. Because there are ways. It just you gotta. This might not be the way they want, which is. I always talk about God. God never gave me anything. The only thing God's ever given me the way I want is delivered me from chewing ice cubes. So
Yeah, and in the industry, and it changes so much with not only reps but also programs coming and going and new ones, and it's hard to keep up, with the choices out there to help navigate people. And that's one thing that is the beauty of our monthly networking meetings is that we can bring people together so that we know resources and we know how to help people with better options. So, thank you for doing what you're doing there and
And I
mentor.
will say one thing. Can I say one thing? Now, if you want tips on how to get insurance to say yes and to keep them in treatment, I can have a conversation with me. I'll be glad to help you because I know how to do it now.
Okay. Sounds like another webinar at a future date. Well, great. Well, thanks again for speaking and sharing your knowledge. Thanks everybody for joining today. Thanks, Parker and the Freed Hardeman University. Stay tuned. At the end of May, we're going to have a really good one from Elijah Rising, and they're going to be talking about human trafficking, especially with the World Soccer tournament going on in Houston and how that's going to affect Houston area. So that's going to be a very informative webinar next month. So check out social media and the webinar that'll be coming out soon. Thanks for joining us, Glenn. Sikkim Bears. My son's a senior there. So, all right, I'm passionate about that. So, and that's all we need for today. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next month.
TCU,
Thank you,
brother.
guys.
TCU.
Bye
Bye now.
bye. Thank you.